The Galactic Council chamber fell silent when Admiral Chun stood from her seat. She was a small woman by human standards, her gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her uniform covered with medals from wars that most species in this room could not even imagine. The Velthrani ambassador, a towering creature of blue scales and golden eyes, looked down at her with something close to amusement. "You cannot be serious," the ambassador said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The Dominion fleet numbers over 10,000 warships. Your entire species has existed in space for barely 3 centuries. You expect us to believe that Earth will stand against the Dominion alone?" Admiral Chun did not blink. Her voice carried across the room with the calm of someone who had seen death many times and had learned not to fear it. "I am telling you what will happen if the Dominion crosses into human territory. We have given them our warning. We have told them what awaits. Whether they believe us or not is their choice." The Velthrani ambassador laughed. It was a cold sound, like stones grinding together. "Warnings mean nothing to the Dominion. They have conquered 47 species. 47 civilizations that once thought themselves powerful now serve as slaves in Dominion minds. What makes humanity so special?" "Nothing," Admiral Chun replied, "except that we mean what we say." 3 weeks later, the Dominion fleet entered human space. Commander Vex Call stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was a massive creature, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 arms and skin that looked like hardened volcanic rock. For 200 years, he had led Dominion forces against species across the galaxy. Not once had he tasted defeat. Not once had any enemy survived his approach. Around him, his officers prepared for what they all assumed would be another simple conquest. The humans had sent their warning, just like every other species before them. They had spoken of terrible weapons, of fleets that would crush any invader, of a determination that could not be broken. Vexcall had heard such words 100 times before. They always came from the weak. The truly strong never needed to announce their strength. "Commander," one of his officers called out, "we are detecting human ships at the edge of the system. Approximately 200 vessels." Vexcall allowed himself a smile. 200 against 10,000. The humans were either brave or stupid. Probably both. "Move the fleet into attack formation. Let us end this quickly." The Dominion fleet spread across space like a swarm of metal locusts. Each ship was a fortress of destruction, armed with weapons that had burned entire planets to ash. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known what it felt like to be prey. Admiral Chun watched from the bridge of the Earthship Defiance. Around her, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, no desperate prayers. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Every human in the fleet knew what was at stake. "Admiral," her tactical officer said, "the Dominion fleet is entering optimal range. They are not raising shields." Chun nodded slowly. The Dominion was arrogant. They did not believe they needed shields against such a small force. It was exactly what she had expected. "Signal all ships. Weapons free on my command." Across the fleet, weapon systems powered up. But these were not the primitive energy cannons the most galactic species used. Human weapons had evolved on a very different path. Where others had focused on elegant solutions, humans had focused on raw, devastating power. They had built weapons designed not just to defeat enemies, but to make sure those enemies could never threaten them again. The first shot came from the Defiance. It was a projectile, a simple metal slug accelerated to nearly 1% of the speed of light. It crossed the distance between the 2 fleets in seconds and struck the side of a Dominion cruiser. The ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a proud vessel of conquest. The next moment, it was scattered atoms spreading across the void. For a long moment, no one in the Dominion fleet understood what had happened. Their sensors had detected the incoming projectile, but at that speed, there had been no time to react. No time to raise shields. No time to do anything except die. Commander Veskal stared at his displays with growing confusion. What was that? What did they use? Before anyone could answer, the human fleet fired again. This time, it was not a single shot but a storm of destruction. Missiles carrying nuclear payloads, projectiles that shattered Dominion hulls like glass, and electronic warfare systems that turned Dominion computers against themselves. In the first 10 seconds of battle, humanity destroyed over 300 Dominion ships. Vexkull felt something he had not felt in 2 centuries. Fear. Pure, primal fear. Raise shields. All ships raise shields. But the shields designed to stop energy weapons were useless against solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds. They passed through like they were not even there. The Dominion fleet, which had entered human space expecting an easy victory, was now fighting for its very survival. On Earth, billions watched the battle unfold through satellite feeds. In homes and workplaces, in schools and hospitals, humanity held its breath. This was the moment they had prepared for. Not just the military, but every human being alive. For 300 years, they had watched other species fall to the Dominion. They had seen the warnings ignored, the promises broken, the civilizations destroyed, and they had made a choice. They would not be victims. They would not beg for mercy. They would fight. The human fleet moved through the Dominion formation like wolves through sheep. Every ship knew its role. Every captain understood the plan. They had practiced this battle 1,000 times in simulations. They had studied every Dominion tactic, every Dominion weakness, and now they were putting that knowledge to use. Commander Vexkull ordered a retreat. For the first time in his military career, he gave the command to run. But the humans were faster. Their ships, smaller and more agile, cut off escape routes and drove Dominion vessels into kill zones where they could be destroyed with maximum efficiency. Why will they not accept our surrender? Vexkull demanded. 3 times he had broadcast his willingness to negotiate. 3 times the humans had ignored him. His communications officer looked up with fear in his eyes. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human flagship. Vexkull grabbed the console. Put it through. Admiral Chun's face appeared on the screen. She looked exactly as she had in the council chamber, calm and controlled. Commander Vexkull, you were warned. Every species in this galaxy was warned. Humanity does not make empty threats. We do not bluff. You chose to invade our space anyway. Now you will face the consequences. We surrender, Vexkull shouted. We offer complete surrender. Take whatever terms you want. Chun shook her head slowly. The Dominion has destroyed 47 civilizations. Billions of lives ended because of your empire's hunger for conquest. We are not interested in your surrender. We are interested in making sure no species ever thinks they can do to humanity what you did to the others. The transmission ended. Outside, the battle continued. The Dominion fleet, which had numbered 10,000 ships at the start of the engagement, was now down to less than 4,000. Human losses were minimal. The weapons, the tactics, the technology that humanity had developed in secret over 3 centuries were proving their worth. In the Galactic Council chamber, the remaining ambassadors watched in stunned silence. The Vilthrani ambassador, who had laughed at Admiral Chung just weeks before, stood frozen before the display screens. He had always believed that the Dominion was invincible. He had always believed that humanity was just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. He had been wrong. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, less than 500 Dominion ships remained. They were allowed to retreat, not out of mercy, but because humanity wanted survivors. They wanted witnesses. They wanted every species in the galaxy to know what happened when you underestimated Earth. Commander Vexkull survived. He returned to Dominion space with the shattered remains of his fleet and delivered his report to the Dominion High Council. He told them about the weapons he could not stop, the tactics he could not counter, the determination he could not break. He told them that humanity had been preparing for this war since the moment they first learned of the Dominion's existence. Every resource, every invention, every scientific breakthrough had been directed toward one goal: survival. The Dominion High Council listened to his report and then did something they had never done before. They voted to retreat, not just from human space, but from all territories near Earth. They established a buffer zone of 50 light years, a region they declared off-limits to all Dominion military forces. It was an admission of defeat unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Chun returned to Earth as a hero, but she did not celebrate. In her mind, the war was not over. It would never be over as long as species like the Dominion existed. Humanity had won a battle, perhaps even won the right to survive for another few centuries. But the universe was vast and full of dangers they had not yet encountered. At the next Galactic Council meeting, no one laughed when the human ambassador spoke. No one dismissed their warnings or questioned their resolve. The other species looked at humanity with something new in their eyes. It was not quite respect, and it was not quite fear. It was the recognition that came from seeing a predator reveal its true nature. The Dominion had assumed humanity was bluffing. They had assumed that the warnings were just the desperate words of a weak species trying to avoid the inevitable. They had been wrong. So terribly, catastrophically wrong. And in the depths of space, aboard stations and ships and colonies that stretched across 100 worlds, humanity continued to prepare. They built more weapons, trained more soldiers, developed new technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. Because they understood a truth that other species had forgotten. Peace was not given. It was earned. And the price of that peace was eternal vigilance, eternal strength, and the willingness to use both without hesitation. The universe had learned a lesson that day. When humanity made a threat, they meant it. When they drew a line, they defended it. And when they went to war, they did not stop until their enemies could never threaten them again. The Imperial fleet had not been bluffing. Neither had Earth.